The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah, go Cowboys! This is Mick Shots, streaming live on DallasCowboys.com and the official Dallas Cowboys app. Now, here are Bill Jones, Everson Walls, and Mickey Spagnola.
Well, the dust has settled on the best reality TV show anywhere. That would be the NFL Draft. And now it's down and back to reality as we are back in here in the SWBC podcast studio for Mick Shots. Bill Jones, Mickey Spagnola, and it's the return of Everson Walls, who is right now scanning the undrafted free agents out there, knowing that there's going to be an Everson Walls in this group somewhere.
I am looking at a young man named Eric Scott. Thank you very much.
There you
Trying
go.
to see what he's going to do for the boys.
Got your cornerback there. Traded a fifth-round pick next year in order to get into the top of the sixth round and take that cornerback out of Southern Miss.
It's my sleeper of the draft.
Really? Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
There's something to this kid, and one of the reasons why he kind of fell out of a lot of the draft nicks analysis is they saw a cornerback and they saw a 40 time of 4.72.
No, they didn't.
And they thought,
I guarantee
they didn't.
Then they thought, oh, it might be Everson Walls.
right?
Hey, I just see a couple of Walls plays right here now. This guy's pretty good.
But what happened on his, I think it was during his pro day, that 2 steps into his 40, he pulled a quad, and he finished, right?
So he's really running a 4.4.
Yes, yes.
Well, hey, look, if you're running a 4.7, you really don't have any quad muscles.
And you know what he did? He ended up doing workouts for the Cowboys and sending them video. I'm sure his agent had a little bit to do with that.
Yeah, of course. That's good marketing.
And if you look at his highlights, he's had 2 interceptions, both for touchdowns, and he can scoot. So he may have fallen that far just because of that 40 time.
Well, and the draftniks needed to look at his vertical and his broad jump. His vertical was 39.5, and his broad jump 11.1, and he had 16 bench reps of 225 pounds.
That's pretty good.
How about 16 bench reps for a cornerback of 225
Well, he's no Everson
pounds?
Walls, because I couldn't do any of that stuff.
So there you go. Right off the top, it's Eric Scott.
We're talking start
Yeah,
right
we're
with
going
the
all the way
sixth
down
round.
to the 6th round.
All right, we got so much to get to, so little time to get there. And
all right, let's go.
Mickey, where would you like to start with our draft recap?
Let's go with the first-round pick,
Mazi
Smith. I've already nicknamed him the Maz, okay? And now, did you see his bench press?
34.
225, 34 times. Think about that. This guy
Might be the strongest player in the entire draft.
well, he's
There were some that had 39. There was one that had a 39 bench rest, but I'm talking about just as far as
right.
power, the strength, and the explosion, and all that stuff.
And I think long arms, too,
Yep.
which takes a
Nearly
lot
35.
more
I like that.
effort.
I do like
right?
that, yeah.
Right.
I think this
there's
guy,
some 39, and some guys who can put up 39 reps, but they got 29-inch arms.
they ain't got far to push it, right? I'm all over this kid. His nature, his personality.
He's got a Micah presence to him,
Yes,
I think.
he
Just
does.
the way he carries himself and the confidence that he has.
His upbringing. I mean, he may be strong, but I think he's pretty tough. And that's what you want in a nose tackle, right?
That's
Somebody
why Micah was so excited about it.
Yeah, no kidding. Like, here's somebody who's going to keep people off me. Vander Esch should have been excited too. But this guy doesn't look like he gets moved very much. So I like that he said that when somebody tried to describe how fast he was, how strong he was, and he said, well, one of my friends said I was like a refrigerator when you push it down a hill. So watch out for the Maz.
It builds up steam in a hurry. Huh?
You know,
we weren't the only ones interested in him, right? I mean, people
there was 2 defensive tackles went right after him, by the way.
They said the Chiefs were trying to trade up to get Mazi.
Yeah. And the Cowboys, it's like, no, I think we'll do. And so before we get into pick by pick, I just wanted to point out a couple things before we start. And it's kind of what I wrote in my column to wrap up the draft. Number one, you got to remember where the Cowboys were drafting, right? You're at 26, 27, 28, 25 for all your picks. The rounds are getting picked over. There were a lot of guys they were interested in that went off the board, and they had to just kind of sit there and be patient and follow their board. The other thing I think you need to remember, if you're going to be honest about the draft, they spent 3 draft picks on trades for starters, right? They used the draft pick on Brandon Cooks. Yep. They used the draft pick on Stephon Gilmore, and they used the draft pick on Jonathan Hankins. So if you throw those 3 guys into the total of their draft, I think they did a pretty darn good job considering where they were drafting, because it's not easy to draft that late, and it's usually not easy to be patient enough and not start trading picks again to move up for a certain guy. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, I must say, once you establish having great first-round picks over a number of years, especially in the last 10, 12 years, we've done extremely well. I'm going to put my trust in Will. That's just the way I see it. If he thinks he's good, you've proven to me that I can trust you with first-round picks. And this guy here seems like to be no exception. Seems like no exception at all.
All right. And I tweeted this out on Friday. On Friday morning, just doing some more research on Mazi Smith, I discovered a Philadelphia Eagles-based podcast called Inside the Birds Podcast. And Greg Cosell, who is a well-respected talent evaluator in the league or in the media, on one of the podcasts leading up to the draft, he was talking about Mazi Smith. And the quote that I tweeted out from that podcast, he said, "There's not another defensive line prospect in this class, including Jalen Carter, with the size, mass, live feet, and short area explosiveness as Mazi Smith. He's a pretty rare prospect."
Wow.
And when you look at with those, I remember Randy White said for years, the Manster said for years, you know what the Cowboys need on this?
That's just how he says it, too.
We need one of those big bazookas in the middle of the offensive line. And in this draft, there weren't very many of those big bazookas in the middle of a defensive line, meaning a defensive tackle who is 320 pounds or greater. Really, if you look at the 5, there are about a handful that got drafted, maybe 4 or 5 of those defensive tackles who are 320 or greater. One of them is Jalen Carter, who, I mean, you look at his tape at Georgia, and you can make a great assessment that he is the number 1 player in this draft, the way he played. It's the other stuff that dropped him down. All right.
And there was a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, and then you got Mazi Smith, who is the 26th pick of the draft. And then the next one, there's a Siaki Ika from Baylor. I think he went in the early. He went number 98 overall. Keandre Coburn from Texas went late in the draft to Kansas City, 6th round pick, and that was basically it as far as those types. There's other defensive tackles, but they're 300, 305 or whatever.
Right.
When you're looking at a guy who can play over the nose, and with the athleticism, and the Cowboys have talked about that, you can use him in a different way than what he was used at Michigan and unleash some of that athleticism that he's got.
And I'll tell you what, when you see him in person, whatever weight they listed him at, it's choice pounds, by the way. It's not big, sloppy. He can put on another 10, 15 pounds.
But you saw, and he used to weigh another
Yes.
25 pounds.
Oh, did he?
Yes. And when there's a before and after picture of him when he got to Michigan, and he got in that weight room, and he transformed his body.
Yeah.
I think I know the real reason why Mickey likes this guy. I was looking at his bio. He graduated with a degree in creative writing.
Yes.
He hopes to become a screenwriter or
Oh,
poet.
Lord.
I'm going to hand off to him, all right? He can have Mick Shott's column, all right? His grandparents put out a newspaper during the civil unrest in the 60s, I believe.
In Grand Rapids.
Yeah, put out, and it was a supplemental type newspaper, not the city newspaper, their own newspaper. So, yeah,
It was called The Organizer.
he's got writing genes, if nothing else, right?
A Renaissance man.
Yes,
Mazi Smith.
absolutely. So yeah,
So I'm all on board with Mazi Smith.
all right.
And, there, as Everson alluded to, there are opportunities to trade down, whatever. Well, it sounded like whoever's going to trade up had Mazi on their mind. And in this draft, I think it was a deeper draft as far as overall. Now, but as far as the elite first-round talent, it was a more shallow draft. And so you could make the case, you can benefit from having more draft picks in the third and fourth round or so forth, what you might be able to get. But for what this team needed for this defense, what Dan Quinn wanted for this defense, what Micah Parsons wanted for this defense, they needed to stay where they were and take the best player available right there for this team.
And let's remember that 11 of 17 opponents rushed for at least 100 yards against the Cowboys. And in their 5 losses, everybody rushed for at least 136 yards, including Green Bay with 207, and I think Jacksonville ended up with 192. So if you look at their losses, what happened? They had problems stopping the run, and they needed somebody in the middle. It got better after they made the draft deadline trade for Jonathan Hankins. Unfortunately, he got nicked up and didn't get to play as much. Now, they re-signed him, and someone would say, well, they already got Jonathan Hankins. Well, Jonathan Hankins has got a battle on his hand to get snaps, I think, with this kid here. But it's a good two-man
and it's a rotation. Yeah, it's a
right?
rotation on the defensive line. Mike McCarthy talked about it last week in the pre-draft press conference. It's emulating what the Cowboys did back in the 90s, where you're rotating guys in there on the defensive line.
Here's a weird little title for the young man to take with him. He was named #1 freak in college. By the Athletics
Bruce Feldman.
Yeah, I never heard of this guy. I never heard of that stat.
He did a freak like his own.
He does that every year. Every year, the
Who
college.
was last year?
I can't remember who it was, but he was a #1 on the list. He lists about a dozen to 15 freak athletes. I mean, just their rare type athleticism, and Mazi was at the top of his list.
Excellent. I love it. I love it.
So, all right, we're all on board with Mazi.
Good on Mazi.
Okay.
Second round.
Good on Schoonmaker. Luke Schoonmaker, the tight end out of Michigan. Another Michigan man.
So here's the downside of drafting where they did, because I think they thought, and everybody else must have thought it too, that Sam Laporta would end up dropping to them, right? Everybody's going to take Mayer and
Who's everybody?
Kincaid.
Who's everybody's thinking that?
Yeah, everybody that was predicting.
Okay,
Not the teams,
so-called,
because the teams
the
knew,
so-called
right?
expert,
But
right.
the Cowboys were hoping, right? And that hope went right out the door with the third pick in the second round when Detroit took Sam Laporta.
Yeah, Dan Campbell, a tight end by nature, he did not think that Sam Laporta would drop all the way to 58 in the second round, obviously.
No, obviously not. And he was probably the best all-purpose tight end, not a guy that's just going to be vertical, line up out wide and catch passes. He can do everything, and that's what they were looking for. a tight end that could do everything, including blocking. And I'll go back to, they're at times problems late in the season running the football. I don't think they got much from their tight ends.
No, they didn't.
In the
they
blocking
sure didn't.
area.
I don't know what happened there.
So I think
I'm not gonna lie, Spags. I was looking at Mayer. I thought Mayer would be a excellent pick for him. That was my.
Well, he went the next pick.
He went with the next pick, right?
And so they don't think that he's as all around in regards to blocking.
Who's that?
The Cowboys. We don't think. We didn't think that Meyer was really the all-around tight end that we needed.
Well, I think they had them grouped together.
Yeah.
And we don't know how they had them rated, but I think they probably had a group of 4 or 5 that they were that they were good with drafting and in an early round in the second round.
Yeah.
And Schoonmaker obviously was one of those guys because they took him. But I think Dalton Kincaid would have been, and he was the first one to go, just ahead of them in the first round. And then you had Laporta and Mayer, and then Luke Musgrave went 42 to Green Bay. So there's 4 right there that came off the board. And then you're looking at the fifth one.
I think the difference was they probably think he's a better run blocker than all those 4. I truly think that has something that was the difference in regards to picking him out of the 4 that was available.
But they weren't available. They were gone.
They were gone.
Yeah.
They were all gone.
So it was more like, all right, it's the drop-off in their opinion.
Yeah.
And so that's why they felt like they needed to go ahead and use the second rounder on him because they had the next grouping of tight ends were maybe, I don't know what
he was there.
And I would have to say that he, out of the second group of tight ends, he's probably a better blocker than that particular group that was available.
He was the 5th tight end to go off.
I understand.
So
well, and the other, my Big Green Notebooks, Darnell Washington was another one that I think they probably liked, but they didn't like the medicals on him, and so they were not going to draft him, and he wound up going late in the 3rd round to Pittsburgh, and so there's some issues.
We're going to be a running team. So I think that these tight ends they're looking at, whoever they fall to, it didn't matter. They better be able to block and be able to catch the ball.
Well, I saw one name came up, undrafted free agents, was a fullback.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple of them, actually. Yeah. That Princeton Fant from Tennessee is also a fullback type. He's not the tight end height. He's like 6'1". I've got it written down here. But Hunter Lipke from North Dakota State, who ran for a lot of yards at North Dakota State, but 235 pounds. I had him on my radar, and I think he was probably a draftable guy. Didn't get drafted, but he's 6'1" and a quarter, 234 pounds. And actually could carry the ball too. I mean, he's more than just a fullback because he ran for a lot of yards.
Is he carrying the ball or is he?
No, I mean
just
he was
kind of carrying.
No, he was. They were. You know what I'm saying? No, he was.
We need 1 yard here.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it was North Dakota State.
Okay.
And so, but I mean, he actually.
No, I like North Dakota State.
Right. He ran for a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns for.
He's got some
North Dakota State. But if you look back at what Mike McCarthy has done with his offense through the years, the John Kuhn days of the Packers, he loves that fullback, and so that's why it's not a surprise.
That's where the tight ends are going to come in.
That's right, and so it's not a surprise at all that they. It sounds like reportedly they've got a couple of fullbacks undrafted that are on the run radar: Hunter Lipke and Princeton Fant.
And so, and by the way, let me clear this up because I heard somebody talking about it this morning on the radio, pointing out that they guaranteed him $200,000, right? Well, here's what the guarantee is. The guarantee is basically we're going to keep you at least on the practice squad because if you're on the practice squad for the whole season, it comes to about $200,000. So basically. That's the deal with the guarantee. So that they at least know that if nothing else, I'm going to be on the practice squad.
Here's the other thing about because there's a lot of talk out there that and I got immediate text from people saying they reached on the tight end in the second round, whatever. Here was the dynamic of this draft compared to say last year's draft. Last year. first tight end that was drafted in that draft was Trey McBride out of Colorado State. He went late in the second round, number 55 overall to the Arizona Cardinals. By pick 55 or 58 when the Cowboys picked this year, there had already been 4 tight ends that were off the board. So if you put, I think, Mickey, if you put this tight end class in last year's draft, they would not have been coming off the board in the second round. You had better a deeper top end of the wide receiver class last year. Not taking anything away from these tight ends, but it's just the way this particular draft worked, where the tight ends came off the board in the second round. That's why you had to go get your tight end in the second round.
And another tight end came off the board before they would have picked in the third round. Where did I say?
Well, there are 3 tight ends. There was one right after them.
Tucker Kraft.
Right.
And then right after them, another tight end.
Cameron Latou out of Alabama. There was one right after.
And then Darnell Washington
right.
in the third.
Right, who was off their board. But
yes.
And Brenton Strange went late second round, too. But fourth round, there were like 6 tight ends that were drafted last year. This year, there were no tight ends taken in the fourth round. And in fact, if you look at the entire draft, there were 15 tight ends drafted this year. Well, there were 18 last year, but 17 of those 18 were drafted in the third round or later last year.
And I think what people also need to remember, when you're drafting that late in a round, it's almost like taking that guy in the next round, right? Like the 26th pick in the first round, probably, you could say, well, we don't take defensive tackles in the first. They hadn't done it since, Russell Maryland? But this is almost like a second-round pick. The same thing with the tight end. It's almost like a third-round pick. Mm-hmm. All their picks, you can just say, okay, other than trading up for the first pick in the 6th round, all those picks are almost the next round.
When you look at this tight end, Schoonmaker, compared to Jake Ferguson, I really like Jake Ferguson myself.
I do too.
And of course, he was a 4th-round pick last year. Last year's draft, I got the numbers here now. There was 1 tight end taken in the 2nd round. There were 4 taken in the 3rd round, and there were 10 taken in the 4th round that year. I don't think that there was that much difference probably in the grade of Schoonmaker versus Jake Ferguson last year. It's going to be very interesting. I think Schoonmaker, who, by the way, is older than both Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot. He'll turn 25 in September. I think he'll fit right into this room. Sean McEwen is 15 months older than him. So you got 4 tight ends.
Why is he so old?
He didn't play his first couple of years at Michigan. In fact, he was playing behind Sean McEwen, and then he was a starter his last 2 years. He was I assume, Michigan with Harbaugh, they've got a ton of tight ends on their roster.
So wait a minute, we have how many Big Ten tight ends
4.
do we have?
4.
Everybody.
Yes.
On this
all
team.
of them are
Everybody.
all Big Ten tight ends.
I just realized
right.
that. Indiana, right? One of Ferguson from Indiana.
Hendershot.
Hendershot, yeah.
Right. So
that's crazy.
So it's going to be very interesting. And McCarthy loves his tight ends.
So if they were going
to running game,
if they want to have 3 tight end sets, they better be able to block. Mm-hmm. So maybe with this 3, they don't have to bring in a tackle to be the 3rd blocking tight end when they go 3 tight.
Which was what they had to do last year to try to get the run game going at all.
Exactly.
All right, we got much more to get to. We went through a whole segment and didn't even mention Deuce.
Well, we will
have to correct that wrong when we come back here on Mick Shots.
The Medal of Honor is our country's highest military award for valor in combat. More than 40 million individuals have served in the armed forces since the Civil War. Fewer than 4,000 have received the Medal of Honor. The National Medal of Honor Museum will be a place to preserve these legacies and inspire America. It's being built right next door to the Dallas Cowboys in Texas. Help us honor our country's greatest heroes. Learn more and get involved at mohmuseum.org.
We paid how much for those lessons?
Shh, she's doing great.
Oh yeah, totally. Can you pass me a Pepsi Zero Sugar? Great job, honey! Oh, look at that. That's not the end.
No way. Now it's time for the encore.
You know what? You're right. 5 times? Not enough times.
For everyone who traded in rock concerts for their kids' recitals, you've compromised enough. Pepsi Zero Sugar. That's what I like.
Nobody protects you from mayhem like Allstate. You hear that? I'm a torrential downpour. Torrential? What's that even mean? It means you can't see out of your windshield. And if you have the wrong car insurance, you might have to make it rain to fix your bumper. So switch to Allstate, save money, and be better protected from mayhem, like me.
Based on coverage and limits selected, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. In most states, prices vary based on how you buy. Allstate Bar and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
What do you call a group of grown men and women with their faces painted silver and blue who get together every week to share a 3-hour-long ritual of jumping, singing, and toasting Miller Lite in 10-gallon hats while yelling, "How about them Cowboys?" You call it Miller Time in Dallas. Here's to the Cowboys. Here's to the original light beer. It's Miller Time. Celebrate responsibly. 2021 Miller Brewing Company, Fort Worth, Texas.
Back to Mick Shots.
K-Post Roofing and Waterproofing, proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys. From corporate homes to your home. Have your roof checked by choice, not by chance. Call now, 214-225-4860, kpostcompany.com.
Sounded good, Specs.
All right, we started running down the Cowboys draft picks. We got through the first couple in the first 25 minutes of the show.
And we got to speed it up, right?
At this rate, we won't get to the play of the day that was made on Saturday. So we're going to, before we come back to the third-round pick, DeMarvion Overshown, and the fourth-round pick, Junior Fehoko, let's skip ahead to the sixth-round pick, number 212. Yes, there are 2 deuces in 212, and there's 1 deuce on the Cowboys now, and I love the pick of Deuce Vaughn. Who doesn't?
It was a
feel-good moment, huh, Spags?
Pretty most dramatic moment I think I've seen in all my years covering the draft, just how they set it up. Everybody in the room knew basically they were taking Deuce Vaughn, except for his father, Chris Vaughn, who's the Cowboys' assistant director of college scouting, right? And the poor guy, he had been in conversation with his son during the draft, and his son, it's falling, right?
Yes.
And falling. And he was talking about how, he said Deuce was starting to think, oh, my 5'5" height finally caught up with me, right? I'm not going to get a chance here. And so he had been talking to him. Well, what they did was Jerry gets up in front of the room, basically, and he starts talking about 2 other guys, right? And one of them, they ended up taking Brooks, the wide receiver, in the 7th round. And it was almost like there was a debate going. Okay, we got this guy and we got that guy, and now we got this pick, and let's talk about what we're going to do. Well, Jerry started, he must have gone, it seemed like forever he went on, right?
That sounds familiar.
And then finally, there was this silence, and there was a long, pregnant pause, and it was almost like, oh, hell, put Vaughn's name on the card. And you should have seen Chris. He was just overwhelmed with emotion, gets up. Everybody's clapping and cheering. He goes and hugs.
Standing O.
Yeah, goes and hugs Jerry, right? And they said, well, you make the call. So they gave him the phone to call his son. And obviously it was the area code for Dallas shows up on the phone, right? Yeah. And so Chris goes, hey, buddy. He goes, yeah, my phone wasn't working, so I got this one. And his son, yeah, huh? And then he goes, hey, how would you like to go to work with me on Monday? and the kid just, I guess he lost it at his end. Chris lost. He barely could get the words out. He was crying. Everybody was tearing up. It was quite an emotional deal. And I thought the cool thing of it was, and Chris, they pointed out that Chris never advocated for his son. Whenever that discussion came up, he backed off. I'm a pro. We got to discuss this back and forth. But the cool thing was at that point in the draft, and he knew it, but he didn't say it, the number 1 guy left on their board was Deuce Vaughn. So it wasn't like, oh, we're going to do this guy a favor, right? The kid deserved to get drafted according to their board at that point. Hey, and we're talking a damn good football player.
If he was 5'9" and not 5'5", he'd be a second-round pick.
Yeah.
I mean, he is in this draft. He is the most prolific running back in this draft.
Isn't
I mean, you
something?
just statistically, you just look what he did at Kansas State. He was a 2-time consensus All-American the last couple of years at K-State. 14 games last year, ran for 1,558 yards and 9 touchdowns, and caught 42 passes for another 378 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he did the exact same thing
every time I saw him play. He's all over the field.
But, I mean, I even compared him, statistically, you compare his career, a 3-year career at Kansas State, to Bijan Robinson's 3-year career at Texas, and it's almost identical. All in all, Deuce Vaughn had 767 touches for 4,884 yards and 43 touchdowns. Bijan had 599 touches for 4,215 yards and 41 touchdowns. I mean, he's got Bijan on his numbers from college.
And let's remember, they're playing against the same teams, too. It's not like he was playing,
And by the way, his
Big 12
team
is Big 12.
Right?
And by the way, his team won the Big 12 championship. Yes. And much as we talk about what Max Duggan did for TCU in that game and carrying his team on his back, and it was Deuce Vaughn who was the MVP of that game. And then, oh, by the way, he goes and plays Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and he goes 88 yards for a touchdown against NFL players.
So and Chris was sitting there saying, because his insides were getting eaten up, that no one was taking him, and his point was, I wanted him to get drafted if he was Deuce Johnson, not that he was Deuce Vaughn, son of college scout father, right? And he said, and inside he goes, I knew this kid inside out. He goes, heck, I sleep with his mother. That's how much I know this kid, right? And he deserved to be drafted, right? And it lasted to 212. There weren't many more picks left in the 6th at that point, was there?
Right.
But when you look at his career, it's not like he's a guy that plays in spots.
Right.
I mean, he plays every down.
And he runs up the middle, too.
I never saw him, get tired. He carries the load, which is something that, we're worried about here now since we lost Zeke. And so that's the kind of thing that gives me pause.
Yeah.
Or did we?
We'll see.
We will see.
That ship may not have sailed.
The running back room, by the way. And by the way, who has the biggest hands in the running back room?
I don't think I analyzed it that closely.
It's a tie. Tony Pollard and Deuce Vaughn.
Really?
9.5-inch hands.
My goodness.
So you talk about how small he is, how important it is to have big hands. Well, Deuce Vaughn and Tony Pollard have the same size hands. So there you go.
And those hands are pretty good, too. He's pretty good at catching the football.
That's right. And, okay, so the running back room consists of Tony Pollard and the draft pick Deuce Vaughn and Malik Davis and Ronald Jones and Rico Dowdle was signed back after being let go and then came back. So there's your 5 right now. And as Mickey just mentioned, it was asked of Jerry on Saturday, what about Zeke? And the ship has not sailed.
Yeah.
But, you look at what Deuce – what his talents are, his size and so forth, and where he was more of a satellite back, whatever, they still have that need for something.
And, and here's what goes on with a guy like him. Teams are going to look after the draft. They'll get their guys in for the rookie mini camp, few OTAs, and if it comes to June 1, you start going, maybe I can use that guy, and, just pay him something loaded with incentives. And if he wants to still play, he'll do it. Plus, he likes it here, too, by the way. And he's good in the locker room. So we'll see.
When you look at someone like a Ronald Jones, that's a guy that he has a chance to kind of turn the page in his career.
If given the opportunity.
If given the opportunity. And once he's given it, he's got to come through.
Right.
He doesn't have much room for error. It was like myself going to the Giants, or maybe Dave Durson coming to the Giants.
The Cowboys trading for Jonathan Hankins.
There you
go.
This is your time to show us that what they said about you was not correct. Show us that the pro part of your resume. I don't want the con part of your resume. That's what we need to see. Because right now, Jones is the only running back that you could say could get us those tough yards if we chose to use him. And that's something we're going to need this year. Like you said, we still have hope, that things are not over between Zeke and the Cowboys. But if it is, then Jones needs to be that replacement that's going to move the chains. We need someone to move the chains. I like 5'5", but I like 6'1" better.
I wanted to remind myself of Davis's dimensions.
Malik Davis is 5'10", basically. 5'9" and 7/8", 202 pounds.
See,
or is that 212?
They like him.
Can't read my own writing. 212.
And I know they like him, in the scouting department too. So, don't go to sleep on him. Because I think he's got a little something. When he took advantage of his opportunities.
You remember when you talked about Michael Parsons going up against big offensive linemen?
Right.
Size matters.
Yes.
Okay. Size would matter with Malik Davis.
It's going to matter. He is 202, not 212.
And his size matters in that regard. So we need a big body. I don't care how good of a runner they are. We need a big body.
And even with Ronald Jones, he's 5 years in the league. They're going into his 6th year. But coming out of USC, he's 205 pounds. Zeke, coming out of Ohio State, 225 pounds. And Pollard, coming out of Memphis, 210 pounds. So,
which, by the way, if you noticed when you walked in the door, today was the first day that the coaches could be on the field with the players in the offseason.
You can tell.
I think everybody was out there.
There
were 60-some players out there, I'll guarantee you.
They're out there drinking water. They've got ropes going. They're doing the shuttle, everything.
Meanwhile, Mahomes and his Chiefs are over here at TCU in the indoor facility working out. It doesn't look anything like.
But, yeah.
And this looks like a regular season practice.
No, I thought when I was like, whoa. And then I thought, the draft. Everybody said, okay, they just got seven more guys, 8 more guys. Better get my butt out there and work.
That's always been the advantage of being in Dallas.
Coaches are watching.
Players love living here year round, and so
that's why I always love the rookie mini camp, because all of a sudden you see the veterans out watching, right? Got to size up their competition.
All right, we continue with more mixed shots in just a moment.
The Medal of Honor is our country's highest military award for valor in combat. More than 40 million individuals have served in the armed forces since the Civil War. Fewer than 4,000 have received the Medal of Honor. The National Medal of Honor Museum will be a place to preserve these legacies and inspire America. It's being built right next door to the Dallas Cowboys in Texas. Help us honor our country's greatest heroes. Learn more and get involved at mohmuseum.org.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Blockchain.com is one of the most trusted ways to buy, sell, and trade crypto. Whether you're always on the go or stay closer to home, Blockchain.com is just a few taps away. Put the power of crypto in your pocket, so no matter where you are, you can trade on your terms and build a crypto portfolio to fit your life. For crypto pros, rookies, and anyone in between, Blockchain.com makes it easy to own a piece of the future. Blockchain.com, trusted by millions, trusted by America's team.
Hey, Cowboys fans, ready to spice up your next watch party? Bring Yo Quiero guacamole and be the game day hero. Yo Quiero means I want, and we know you want great, fresh-tasting, ready-to-serve guacamole for your home gating and tailgating events. Made with real avocados and the perfect blend of spices, it will be the star of any party. You can find us at your local Albertsons or Tom Thumb in the deli section. If you can't find it, talk to your store manager and tell them, Yo Quiero guacamole.
Star Sports Tours is the only official fan travel partner of the Dallas Cowboys, offering exclusive game weekend travel packages with pre-game sideline access and photo ops with current players, cheerleaders, and Cowboy legends. You want to stay at a team hotel, attend the best tailgate party in Texas, tour the Star, and talk X's and O's with me, Everson Walls? With Star Sports Tours, you can. Visit cowboystravel.com to book your travel package today.
Back to Mixed Shots.
Country music is rocking the Star in Frisco with a free multi-day fan festival ahead of the big show. Come celebrate country music's party of the year at the ACM Country Kickoff, May 9th and 10th. The fun starts each day at 3 p.m. with live performances from the newest country music stars, pop-up shops, exclusive artists, merch, a beer garden, food trucks, and much more. Visit acmcountrykickoff.com for more information.
All right, final segment here of Mixed Shots. We got another 20 minutes to go. We got a lot of draft picks still to get to, and so let's backtrack to the third round. And Marvion Overshone, the linebacker from the University of Texas, out of Little Arp, Texas, Piney Woods of East Texas, just outside Tyler, population 982.
Or is he a linebacker?
Yeah, okay. Is he? He was a safety coming out of Arp, Texas, and in fact, an Under Armour All-American, and then converted after a couple of years at Texas to linebacker and became a 3-year starter and all Big 12 linebacker.
And what were his dimensions? Six.
Well,
he's around 220.
Yeah.
He is officially 6'3", 229 pounds, ran a 4.56 40 with a 159 split with 15 bench reps, a 36.5 vertical, and a 10.4 broad jump.
So Dan Quinn got another little toy to play with,
That's
right?
exactly what that
So
linebacker,
John Fossil.
Yeah.
Linebacker
especially
safety,
especially
slash blitzer.
special teams, because he played a whole lot of special teams, and they needed a linebacker. And I'm not saying they drafted a special teams player, but I think he's like a change-up, defensive guguy.
Did he get much playing time in college? Was he?
Oh,
he
yeah,
was a
3-year
full-time
starter, first team All Big 12, and
yeah.
he's got that dog mentality.
Yeah,
he's got a passion that he loves football. I really like him,
and they can use him in coverage.
Is this just piling it on? I mean, we have so many.
But they didn't have a lot of linebackers. They needed depth at the linebacker spot.
You see how linebackers get hurt?
I do.
It's not just here. It's across the league. Running backs get hurt. Linebackers get hurt. And but to your point, I love the fact that he's a converted safety in today's NFL and in the nickel sub packages and so forth, and his ability to defend the pass, and he had 4 sacks, 10 tackles for loss last year at Texas. He's a baller.
So if they need somebody behind J-Ron Kearse, don't be surprised. So he's got some position flex, and that was one of the things that was used in the press conference when they talked about him, position
Interesting
flex.
You mentioned J-Ron Kearse there, because 6'3", 229 for Overshone, and Kearse, when he came out, 6'4", 216. Kearse a 4'6", 40. This guy's a 4'5'6". It's a very, very similar as far as the.
He runs a 4.5.
Yeah, 4'5'6".
That's not bad.
Yeah, no, there's a reason he was an Under Armour All-American in high school.
So he's a guy that you can play close to the line of scrimmage, like a linebacker, but he's got some coverage skills and special team skills. So, yeah, I like the pick.
Okay, let's move on to the fourth round.
Oh, watch out for this guy.
Eliami Fehoko, but you can call him Junior Fehoko.
Junior Fehoko, and no relation to the Fehoko who's already here.
I was going to ask you
but
that.
He is related to Vita Vea, second cousin of Vita Vea.
In Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Yep. And out of San Jose State, 6'3" 3/4 inches tall, 282 pounds. And he can get after. He was the Mountain West Conference Player of the Year, 4-year starter. He had 9 sacks last year, about 8 sacks the year before. Very productive. He's a relentless player, and Dan Quinn has just got to love this guy.
And if you look at his body type and the way he plays, he's a defensive tackle in the making, I believe, too. Not just an edge guy, because he's not like one of those linear type guys that plays defensive end. Because I believe I read they played a 3-4 at San Jose State, and he was a defensive end, but that's like being a defensive tackle.
Yeah, that's it.
So if this is another guy that can play the 3 technique with his speed and strength, they might have landed something here.
So the emphasis is to stop the run and to be able to run. That's going to be our emphasis.
That sounds like
team-wide.
what they had in their mind. Yes. And just looking at his body type, he could be a defensive tackle, a 3 technique, and he'll find his way into the rotation. Now he played. Was that Mountain West?
Yes.
So again, but boy, when you see him taking advantage of those offensive tackles in that conference, it was frightening. So keep an eye on what this guy can do.
All the picks that we have, much pedigree comes with them. Their resume is amazing. So as much as they talk about Philly, I think they said won the draft, right? Everyone's saying Philly won the draft. And the Cowboys, lukewarm. They're pretty lukewarm on our picks, from what I could tell.
Well, when you're drafting what 9th? What did they take Carter at?
Number 9.
Number 9. You better win the draft, right? You're drafting 26. No one takes that into consideration.
There's so much focus on the top 50 picks in the draft that, here's a guy, Fehoko. If you go look at those, the so-called draft experts, Fehoko is like 7th round or whatever, and that doesn't mean he's a 7th round prospect. The people that do this for a living, obviously with the Cowboys, it's a 4th round pick. He's a rugby player. You think he's tough?
They scare me. Yeah, rugby players, they forget their pads all the time.
Yeah.
There was something that he pointed out about being the first or second Polynesian player. I forgot what the term was. But those guys are tough. Mark Tuinei.
Okay, so I approve of that pick, Junior Fehoko.
All right.
So we're going to go fast forward to the 5th round.
Now, this guy I have never heard of. Y'all educate me on.
Go ahead. Say his name.
Awesome. Awesome Richards.
That's what I was going to say.
He's a seam to me until he proves he's awesome.
But he pronounces it.
I know.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I wonder, though, if indeed if it was pronounced Asim and then he got into college and his teammates and coaches said,
awesome.
No, we're calling you Awesome.
Another guy that it sounds like has position flex, too. That he could play, he could compete at guard. So beware.
6'4", 309 pounds, and he has those 34-inch arms that you're looking for, and had some decent athleticism. Needs to strengthen a little bit. 13 bench reps, but the Cowboys obviously have that opening at the end at left guard, and I would think he'll be thrown into the mix along with a bunch of other guys and see who comes out.
They keep talking about Josh Ball. I don't know about a 6'8" guard. You might hit him in the head too much if he stands up. But, I wonder if they also train Willetsko inside.
That was not asked, I don't think.
No, it was.
There's another one, 6'7" and 5'8" is Willetsko.
Yeah. And, I know they were thinking he would be the backup tackle, then he got hurt.
I like some of what Josh Ball did in the run game last year. There's one opportunity after Terrence Steele got hurt in the Houston game, second half of the Houston game. And so I'm intrigued by that, but you're right. At over 6'7", basically 6'7" and a half, it seems rather tall for a guard.
So I think we're going to see open competition there.
Chuma Edoga is the free agent signing, of course, from Atlanta. Who originally was a third-round draft pick himself in 2019 by the Jets and started 8 games his first year with the Jets. But he's been playing tackle throughout his career, and so we'll see how he fares at that guard position too.
Right, yeah. So, and I think that's another thing that for this draft and the guys they have, there's a lot of position flex. They're not just one thing. And, when you're putting your 48-man game day roster together, you need position flex.
But let's face it, fifth-round picks don't normally start their first year in the NFL.
Especially on the offensive line.
Now, Terrence Steele was a rarity as an undrafted guy starting his rookie year at right tackle.
Yeah, but he was only undrafted because of certain situations, right? I mean, why was he undrafted? What was
Texas Tech? I don't know.
Throws Texas Tech under the bus.
I said that for my wife, who's a Red Raider.
That's a fault.
Sometimes, you develop. And, you get in that weight room and all of a sudden, and you get an opportunity and things turn out, right? Everson Walls?
Hey, well, look, I agree with you 100%. I'm looking at Awesome's highlight reel. You think, okay, a guy only bench presses 225, correct? Is that what you just said, Bill?
That's what was reported.
So then he's got to be able to make it up in some other way.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not fast, then you better think fast. If you're not fast, you better be quick as hell. And if you don't have good hands, if not strong hands, you better have good feet. And that is what I see here on his highlights. It's very clear that he has quick and good footwork that can make up for wherever your deficit is in some other part of your game.
That's the first thing I look at for offensive linemen, their footwork.
His footwork is very good.
If you have good feet.
His footwork is very good. I can see that right now.
All right, I was sitting there trying to figure out why was Terrence Steele not drafted, and so I just pulled. I'm not even going to say the name of the person. Just this random overview of Terrence Steele coming out of Texas Tech because his numbers is 6'6". I mean, how does this guy not get drafted? 6'6", 312 pounds with 35 1/8 inch arms, and he ran a 5.03. 27 bench reps with 35-inch arms. All right, and so here is what this analysis was. And he's a 4-year starter, team captain with desired NFL size and length, but a lack of functional bend and reactive movement is hard to get past. He's an intelligent, experienced right tackle who works to his abilities on a fairly consistent basis. He struggles when his length can't save him against moving targets in the run game and against sharp rush counters in pass pro. Despite his leg stiffness, he does a nice job of taking on opponents in front of him, but NFL tackles require much better reactive athleticism and recovery ability than he's able to play with.
What'd they watch? Two games?
What happened? He must have had a horrible game.
And I'm not saying who that was. That's an example of a very respected. But there's so many guys that
I heard a guy
analyze every year.
That sounds like a guy that got cut in the first week of training camp. That's what that sounds like. Whoever they're talking about. That wasn't Terrence Steele.
And he was a better run blocker.
That's right.
So I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, but again. There's 350 prospects that get invited to the combine, and then however many more. I mean, Dane Brugler had 1,800 prospects that because it's a full-time job of his to analyze all these people.
If he analyzed,
and by the way, that wasn't Dane.
If he analyzed or wrote about 50 cornerbacks, Eric Scott was like around. He didn't even get a write-up. He was just listed as the others around 70-something, I think.
I'll confess, he was not in the big green notebook.
Well, no.
What did you miss, Bill? How did you miss it?
But you're thinking.
That's because I'm having to rely on these so-called draft experts to tell me who I need to look at.
Southern Mississippi, right? And right away, if he's at Southern, he's got a chip on his shoulder, by the way. Because in the other schools, he had to go to Butler Junior College to get
Marcus Lawrence went through that.
Yeah, exactly. And then it shows up, it's a cornerback that runs 4.7, but they didn't know why he ran. At least he finished it, and then couldn't do any. I don't think he did any other running or whatever that day. But the Cowboys obviously knew about him, right? And if you look at he don't look 4.7 when he's playing football.
And this is your steal of the draft. That's what you said.
This is my sleeper.
That's the sleeper.
Fehoko is mine, I think.
Okay. I think both of them will, there's a reason why they gave up a 5th next year to move to the top pick in the 6th round, because they must have known somebody else knew about him, right? And they wasn't going to last.
Let's see. They gave up a 5th-round pick for Brandon Cooks.
Right.
They gave up a 5th-round pick for Stephon Gilmore.
Right.
What was around for Hankins? 6th round for Hankins. And now they give up a 5th-round pick for Eric Scott. That's some pretty fair company that he's in.
And again, when we're talking the draft, you're talking 3 guys that you use draft picks for that are going to start.
They have to be included in what your effectiveness would be during the season.
Because those would have been your ammunition to move up in rounds, right? To maybe say, okay, we can move up and use one of these. Well, you already used him for 2 sure starters. The third guy is at least a rotation guy, if not a starter until Mazi's ready to go. And then you picked, but the guy you took in the first round, probably a starter. The second round, he's in the top 3 mix of the tight ends, right? And Overshawn is going to be the Swiss Army knife guy on this team.
By the way, I would do that every year in the draft. I would take, like in the beginning of the 6th round, I would take my 6th-round pick next year and trade it to get into the 6th round. If I like a player, I would do that you just do it every single year. You don't have a 6th round? Okay, I'm going to use next year, so I'm going to trade in. And Philadelphia did that at the top of the 4th round and got Keely Ringo, the cornerback from Georgia, who had slipped out of the second day. They used next year's 4th, traded with Houston, and got the number 105, the 3rd pick of the day on Saturday, and got Ringo. Well, the Cowboys did the same thing in the 6th round and got Eric Scott.
So real quick, here are 2 things they didn't get, and basically because they were being patient. They had the 2 kickers. They would have drafted one of them if they got to
Michigan and Maryland.
The kid from Maryland, Ryland, I think they liked him the best, but both of them got drafted. What was
Moody
it?
Went 3rd round.
3rd round and 4th.
Wow.
3rd round
Wow.
and 4th round, right?
Wow.
But they liked him, so they were on him, and then the 4th quarterback groom a backup type. They liked the old Connell kid from Purdue.
Aiden O'Connell.
And he got drafted way before.
Last pick of the 4th round.
And before that, I think Toon went.
Yeah.
And so they looked at it, those 2 positions, 5th, 6th, 7th, somewhere in there, but those guys didn't last. And, you know, if you're going to follow your board, you don't jump ahead and take a guy when you feel like you have other things more pressing to draft. So from a kicker standpoint, I would imagine they're going to sign another veteran at least, and then see where that goes. But I guarantee you, of all the veteran kickers, did Robbie Gould, did I see he got picked up after San Francisco let him go?
I thought he did. No, I don't have him listed. I fell behind on my markings on it. So.
Okay, so maybe he's out there. But for who had the best season last year that's still out there, you know, I hate to bring it up, but it's Brett Maher. You know, despite what happened down the stretch and in the playoffs, from a regular season standpoint, I think he only missed 3 field goals, something like that. So
no one wants to hear that right now, Spade.
I know, but these guys, they're, you know, kickers aren't dime a dozen, or if they are, that's why it's only a dime. So they're going to have to do some work there.
Ryan Suckup may still be out there. Randy Bullock, I could be wrong on those, but I had them. I tried to track them throughout the offseason. I did not have them with new teams yet.
See, and those guys, whatever their price is, well, it's come down now, right?
Sure has.
Don't have a job, and it's the 1st of May.
But they'll probably handle it unless they get pressed, where they need the market out there for these veteran guys. If they're going to sign, I'm sure they are in contact with their agents, and they'll probably take a look at college guys like they did last year when they brought Garibay in, and then it was later where they brought Maher.
We'll have another kicking competition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So.
And as for the quarterback thing, we'll see if they sign one in free agency.
College free agency?
College free agency, yeah. We'll see where that goes. But whoever they bring in, it's got to be somebody that's worth competing with Will Grier.
could be watching this XFL and watching this.
The XFL quarterbacks, man. I'm sorry.
You know what, though?
I can't get behind them. I can't.
Have you watched this Perez for the Arlington Renegades? In fact, they picked him up middle of the season. He's from Texas A&M Commerce. Very, very successful in college at Texas A&M Commerce. He's got a little something about him.
Yeah.
And he's, in fact,
what little I've watched.
What's his name?
Luis Perez.
And when did he play? Was he part of the championship team?
Well, he's
playing for the championship now.
No, I mean college championship.
Oh,
it was at A&M Commerce. He was like the college player of the year at that level. He won the Harlan Hill Trophy, and they won the national championship in 2017.
I coached that kid.
Okay.
Yeah, I coached that kid.
6'3", 222 pounds.
Where at?
We had some All-American game. Out in California.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sure
okay.
did. That was 2 years ago. So, right, he's about 2 years out of college, right?
He, 2018, he was signed with the Rams, and he's played. He's been around the block and then some.
No, we're talking to a different guy.
Okay.
Talking to a different guy.
He's played for the Birmingham Iron, the Los Angeles Wildcats, which I guess was XFL, New York Guardians, New Jersey Generals, USFL last year. Was with the Rams a little bit last year, and he was with the Vegas Vipers this year, and now the Renegades picked him up, and he's got him in the championship game in 2 weeks.
And they actually scored a bunch of points against.
But my point, even on bringing it up, is there's another pool there in this spring football, whether it's the XFL or the USFL, where these guys are getting playing time. Ben DiNucci was playing for Seattle the Sea Dragons.
Bro. You got to stop bringing that name up. You got to stop bringing that name up.
A.J. McCarron is out there with St. Louis. He's a star. St. Louis has a football team again, and A.J. McCarron's the toast of the town.
All right, we've digressed.
All right. So.
All right, Jalen Brooks, welcome.
All right. That's all we got on Jalen Brooks right now. We talked about him earlier.
Deuce Vaughn.
There it is.
You're welcome.
All right. So as we wrap things up, when are the rookies here?
Not the first.
It's the week later.
The second weekend.
And then they just dive right into the
not
off-season.
this coming weekend.
Used to, they would come in for a rookie camp the weekend after the draft.
And then they go home.
Yeah.
And then they have to come back.
Right.
So
and
now
they pushed it back to where it just marries right into the off-season program.
Exactly.
Okay. That does it for a Monday edition of Mick Shots, and we will shout at you again next Monday.
Go Cowboys.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!